My daughter's groom called me low-class trash in front of 150 wedding guests. My name is Michelle Brown, and I've been sober for 12 years while building a $22 million recovery empire from scratch. But this man had no idea who he was humiliating. What happened next exposed his entire wealthy California family as hired actors, paid $1,500 per day each. And when I dug deeper, I discovered something that would destroy his perfect wedding in the most poetic way possible. The man who looked down on me for being a recovering addict was secretly hiding prescription pills in his tuxedo, collected from 4 different doctors. The same man who called me damaged goods for overcoming my addiction was taking pills throughout his own engagement. And when the truth came out, his fake family literally ran from the reception, leaving a trail of pills across the head table. My daughter tore off her wedding ring and walked away from the altar in tears. But that was only the beginning. What I found about his financial schemes had the FBI knocking on doors within 48 hours. You're about to hear how one cruel comment at a wedding reception unraveled the most elaborate fraud I've ever seen. If you're watching this, go ahead and hit subscribe. I have a feeling you'll want to see how this ends. And please drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let me tell you how a recovering mother taught a pill-popping pretender the difference between real class and fake money. It began 6 months before the wedding, the first time Evan Morrison came to family dinner. I'll never forget walking into my daughter Tessa's apartment. Evan was sitting on her couch, immaculately dressed, legs crossed like a magazine model. When I handed him the flowers I'd brought, he didn't even reach for them. Instead, he leaned back slightly like the petals might stain his pressed shirt. "Tessa didn't tell me you were coming," he said. "This is my mom," Tessa said quickly. "Mom, this is Evan." He gave me a cold smile. "Oh, the one with the situation." The situation. That's what he called 12 years of sobriety. I placed the flowers on the counter and said quietly, "Nice to meet you too." But it wasn't nice. The air felt heavy, like judgment had weight. He scanned me from head to toe, clean jeans, a simple button-down, and boots I'd worn straight from work. Nothing fancy, but nothing shameful either. His expression told another story. "Tessa mentioned you work in construction," he said. "Recovery," I corrected. "I run recovery centers." He nodded dismissively. "That's important work," he said. The word important stretched thin with sarcasm. That was my introduction to the man my daughter would one day almost marry. And it only got worse from there. Every time I visited, he'd vanish into another room with his phone, as if my presence required escape. When we went to dinner, he'd insist on separate checks. And whenever I talked about my work, the lives changed, the families reunited, he'd pivot to something refined, like Napa Vineyards or California real estate. But what stung most wasn't his arrogance. It was the way he began changing my daughter. Tessa had always called me every Sunday. Long, warm conversations about her photography, her goofy rescue dog, her dreams. But after Evan entered her life, the calls grew shorter, the laughter dimmer, and the joy replaced by careful restraint. One day, she finally said it. "Mom, maybe tone down the recovery talk around Evan. He just thinks it's a little heavy." I stood there in my office at New Dawn Recovery Center, surrounded by people fighting to rebuild their lives. "He thinks recovery is heavy," I asked. "He just means his family's more private about that kind of stuff," she said. That family, the mysterious, unseen Morrisons of California, supposedly lived behind gates, guarded by privacy and old money. 6 months of dating, and not once had I met them. "What do they do?" I asked. "Investments." "Real estate," she said, but her tone was vague, rehearsed. I hung up that day with a knot in my chest. I'd built a life helping thousands recover, employing hundreds, and yet, to this man and his invisible family, I was just a former addict who got lucky. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was helping Tessa move a sofa when I overheard Evan on the phone. "No, Mother, you don't understand," he said sharply. "Her mother has a past. Addiction issues." I know. But what can I do? Tessa's already attached. He didn't realize I could hear him. Well, at least we won't have to see her much after the ceremony. I've made sure she's at table 12, in the back near the service entrance. That one sentence hit me harder than any insult I'd ever heard. Table 12. The farthest from the head table where the servers slip in and out unseen. After 12 years of sobriety, of rebuilding everything from nothing, I was still being seated like an embarrassment. But I'd learned something during recovery. Silence doesn't save anyone. Silence is surrender. So instead of shrinking, I started digging, because something about Evan's family had never added up. If they were so wealthy, why had Tessa never met them? Why were all their photos so perfectly lit, so generic they could have come from a stock image site? Why did their family business have no website, no records, not even a LinkedIn page? Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have sat quietly at table 12, smiled politely, and pretended not to notice the cracks. But I wasn't most people. I called Dr. Sarah Williams, my business partner and best friend. "Sarah," I said, "I need a favor. Discreet." She had connections in California from her time at Stanford and agreed to help me verify Evan's background. 3 weeks later, the rehearsal dinner arrived. It was at Desert Ridge Country Club, $25,000 for the weekend, all paid for by his family. I parked outside and stared at the glittering chandeliers through the glass, my reflection faintly superimposed over them. Inside, I could see guests mingling with champagne glasses, laughing, moving like extras in a movie. Evan's supposed family had arrived earlier that day. A father, mother, 2 aunts, an uncle, and a cousin. 6 strangers playing at wealth. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. "Michelle, call me." "It's urgent. You were right to be suspicious." I stepped out of the car and called immediately. "What did you find?" Sarah's voice was steady but serious. "They're not real, Michelle. Not in the way he described. The family your daughter's marrying into, they're actors. Professional, hired through a casting agency in Los Angeles." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You're telling me Evan paid people to pretend to be his family?" "Exactly. They've got contracts, NDAs, even rehearsal schedules, their bios read like movie scripts. This isn't a family, Michelle. It's a production." I sat in silence, staring through the windshield at that glittering building full of lies. This wasn't just vanity or pride. It was manipulation on a level I'd only ever seen in people hiding serious problems. Still, I needed proof. I walked inside. The first person I met was Richard, the supposed father, tall, silver-haired, confident. He greeted me with an expensive smile. "Michelle, wonderful to meet you." "So you're in real estate?" I asked. "Yes, commercial development," he replied. "Which areas?" "Oh, mostly Northern California." "What's your company called?" He hesitated. "Hartwell Properties." "I see. I'll have to look that up." Next was Margaret, his elegant wife. Her jewelry glittered too brightly under the lights. "That necklace is beautiful," I said. "Family heirloom," she smiled. "Really? It looks like Tiffany's Celeste collection. Brand new." Her smile faltered. "Oh, it's just similar." The uncle mispronounced Bordeaux. The aunt thought the Hamptons were in Connecticut. The cousin claimed she went to Yale but couldn't name a single college. When I finally faced Evan, I smiled. "Your family's lovely." "They are," he said smoothly. I hope you see now why Tessa's so proud. I do, I said, tilting my head. Though it's strange. I looked up Hartwell Properties. No website, no registry. He shifted uncomfortably. We're private people. Of course, I said softly. So private, it's like you don't exist. Perfect. The rehearsal dinner ended awkwardly. Guests whispered behind champagne flutes while Tessa tried to smooth things over. Evan brushed off my questions with tight smiles, but his confidence had started to crack. I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes every time I mentioned his family business. When I left that night, I caught him whispering harshly into his phone, "No, she's asking too many questions." Back home, I didn't sleep. I replayed every red flag, every patronizing glance, every condescending comment he'd made. But beneath all of it, I sensed something else. A desperation to control perception, to maintain the illusion of class at any cost. That kind of obsession doesn't come from arrogance alone. It comes from fear. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah. I have the documents. Contracts, payments, everything. Want me to bring them to the wedding? Yes, I typed back. Bring it all. The wedding day dawned flawless. Blue skies, warm air, and enough sunlight to make everything look perfect. I put on the same black dress Evan once called church lady cheap. It felt like armor now. When I arrived at Desert Ridge Country Club, I found my seat, table 12, tucked near the service entrance. Fitting, I thought. From here, I could see everything. Evan's family mingled effortlessly, shaking hands and laughing in choreographed rhythm. Their timing was impeccable. They looked like a magazine spread come to life. But no amount of polish could hide what I now knew. They were actors hitting marks, not relatives celebrating love. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, I stayed silent. This wasn't the moment. Some truths need witnesses, and this one deserved a crowd. By sunset, the reception hall glowed golden. Guests toasted, servers weaved between tables, and laughter rippled like music. Then Evan stood, glass in hand. To family, he began. To success, to refinement, and to those who remind us where we came from. His eyes found mine. Some of us rise above humble beginnings, he said, smiling faintly. Others just never rise at all. The laughter was cautious, brittle. My daughter looked mortified. And that's when I stood, my heart steady. To family, I said clearly. Real family. Across the room, Sarah entered, manila folder in hand. Every eye in the room turned as Sarah approached. This is Dr. Sarah Williams, I said. My business partner, and the only person here tonight who knows the truth about the Morrison family. Evan's glass froze midair. His father stiffened. His mother gripped her napkin so tightly the fabric twisted. Sarah set her folder on the head table and faced the crowd with calm authority. 3 weeks ago, Michelle asked me to verify the Morrison family's business background. What I found, she said, pulling out the first page, was something none of you could imagine. A ripple of murmurs spread through the guests. This so-called family, Sarah continued, does not exist. Their California real estate empire? Fake. Their charity foundation? Fabricated. Every one of these people, she gestured toward the head table, was hired through Prestige Acting Solutions in Los Angeles. Professional actors paid $1,500 per day to pose as relatives for social events. Gasps, forks dropped. The mother began shaking her head. That's ridiculous. Sarah held up a glossy headshot. Linda Foster, listed as Elegant Society matron. Recognize yourself? The woman went silent. Sarah turned to the man beside her. And Richard Hartwell, real name Robert Patterson, a commercial actor specializing in distinguished executive roles. Someone in the back laughed nervously. Evan slammed his hand on the table. Enough. You can't do this here. I took a slow breath. You did this, Evan. You built your lies right here in front of everyone who loved my daughter. Sarah flipped another page. All payments were funneled through S. Morrison Financial Services, a shell company with no real address, no employees, and no tax filings. And guess who owns it? She looked directly at Evan. You do. Guests began whispering. Phones came out. The room buzzed with disbelief. Michelle, he hissed, you're ruining everything. No, Evan, I said quietly. You ruined it when you decided your fantasy was worth more than the truth. Then Sarah added softly, and there's something else. She reached into her folder. Prescription logs. 4 different doctors. OxyContin, Percocet, Adderall, all filled under your name. Tessa gasped. Evan, is that true? For a moment, no one spoke. The music had stopped. The clinking glasses, the laughter, gone. Only the hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. Evan's face drained of color. You had no right. Those records are private. So is recovery, I said. But you didn't think twice before mocking mine. He clenched his jaw. You think you're better than me because you run a rehab business? No, I said evenly. I think I'm better because I stopped lying to myself. Then something rolled across the floor, a small orange bottle, rattling until it hit my daughter's shoe. OxyContin. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Tessa's hand trembled as she bent to pick it up. Evan, this is yours, he stammered. It's just pain medication. For what pain? She asked quietly. Your ego? Guests began filming. Sarah stood still, her expression grim. Evan Morrison, you've been doctor shopping for months. That's a felony under federal law. Evan tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. You're insane. You're all jealous. I cut him off. Of what? A life built on lies? Tessa's voice broke. All this time you called my mother trash. You said her recovery was an embarrassment, but you're an addict, Evan. He grabbed her wrist, desperate. I can fix this. We can still get married. She pulled free. You lied about everything, even your family. The pastor, who had been standing quietly in the corner, finally spoke. Son, you need help. Not vows. Evan's hands trembled. Please, Tess, don't do this in front of everyone. But she was already slipping off her wedding ring. She set it gently on the table beside the spilled pills. This isn't shame, Evan, I said softly. This is truth. The kind you can't buy. The room descended into chaos. Guests whispered, some recording on their phones, others pretending not to watch. Evan's fake parents slipped out the side door, their contracts evidently finished. Tessa stood frozen, staring at the ring she'd just removed. I stepped closer to the head table. Evan, I said, you called me cheap. Low class. Damaged. But everything you tried to fake. Respect, redemption, dignity. I earned the hard way. He dropped his head into his hands. I just wanted to be someone better than I was. Then you should have tried honesty, I said. It's cheaper than actors. Sarah placed the final pages of her report on the table. Pharmacy receipts, prescription IDs, and payment transfers. The evidence was irrefutable. The wedding coordinator whispered, Should we stop the music? Sweetheart, I said without turning. The music stopped the moment he lied. Evan looked up, eyes glassy. I can get help. Then start now, Sarah said gently, before this gets worse. As she spoke, Frank Davis, a private investigator I'd quietly hired, entered the room. He held a separate file. For what it's worth, he said, the state pharmacy board already flagged his name. Expect a call from law enforcement. Soon Evan muttered something under his breath, then stumbled away from the table. The actors were gone. the guests speechless, and the dance floor empty. Tessa walked toward me slowly, her face pale but resolute. "You were right, Mom." Every word I touched her hand. "I wish I hadn't been." By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the perfect wedding was nothing but a crime scene of broken glasses, spilled champagne, and orange pill bottles rolling under white linens. News travels fast, especially when shame meets spectacle. By morning, headlines were everywhere. Bride's mother exposes groom's fake family and prescription fraud during wedding. Reporters camped outside the recovery center. Some wanted statements, others wanted sound bites. But I didn't give interviews. I wasn't chasing revenge, I was protecting my daughter and every person who'd ever been called less than for surviving. 3 days later, Sarah called. "Michelle, the DEA and FBI have opened investigations. Turns out Evan's company wasn't just a shell. It was laundering money through fake consulting invoices." That same day, 3 of our clients from New Dawn Recovery reached out. "You gave us hope," one said. "You showed that recovery isn't weakness, it's power." Tessa stayed with me for 2 weeks. She barely spoke at first. Then one morning she said quietly, "Mom, I should have believed you." "You believed in love," I said. "That's not wrong. You just picked someone who didn't know what love was." She looked down. "I thought class was money." Turns out it's honesty. Her words made me smile through tears. By the end of the month, I got a call from Pastor Mark Johnson, the officiant. "Michelle, would you speak at our next addiction forum? Families need to hear what you did, how you refused to accept shame." That's when it hit me. The fallout from Evan's lies wasn't just ruin, it was revelation. 3 months later, Evan entered a treatment program, quietly, under supervision. Tessa, stronger now, refused contact, but wished him recovery. "He's sick," she said, "but at least he's finally facing it." She started volunteering at my center, working with young women in early recovery. One night, during a session, she said something that silenced the room. "I used to be ashamed of my mom's past. Now I'm proud of it. Because it's proof that truth outlives lies." I realized then that every cruel word, every insult, every moment I was made to feel small had built the spine I stood on that day. Recovery isn't about staying clean. It's about refusing to bow to shame. So, if you're listening to this and someone has ever called you cheap, broken, or low class because of your past, remember this. The most expensive thing in the world is a lie, and the richest people are the ones who've made peace with the truth. If you're in recovery, tell your story in the comments. Someone needs to hear it tonight. Because the moment you stop hiding, you stop being ashamed. And that right there is real class.